What I'm about to tell you is probably going to disgust you, but I don't mean to. I just have no choice because this is something that involves all of us. And every single one of us should be really pissed off about this. And it's happening in such a subtle, slow, and deceptive way. Many people are not even going to see it coming. And when you do, it's too late. And that is how this current Federal Reserve has abused its powers, bended its rules and protocols to manipulate our currency, create an illusionary market, and ignite the largest wealth gap and wealth transfer our nation has ever seen. Not only that, but they've enslaved an entire nation and controlled them by using the power of debt. With these tactics, they have the ability to control and manipulate our very society. And it works like this. So here's a rough draft on how this works. Let's say this right here is the entire money supply of our nation. This is what's available in circulation. And as you can see, there's not a lot of it there. That's quite a thin stack. I want you to keep that in mind because we're going to come back to that in just a second. But first, let's talk about where this money comes from in the first place. You see, the entire monetary policy and the money supply of our nation is controlled by the Federal Reserve. So basically, they are in charge of how much of this makes it into circulation and into the hands of the people. And yes, you're hearing this right. The Federal Reserve is in charge of how much of this makes it in to this right here, the hands of us people. And generally how this works, we'll spend some more time on this later, but when the Fed needs to put money into the economy or into circulation, they do so by purchasing treasuries from the federal government, at which time they convert them into these fancy pieces of paper known as Federal Reserve notes, cash, which is deposited into a bank or financial institution. Now from there, it's up to the banks and financial institutions of our country to disperse this into the economy and onto the people. And unfortunately, this is done in the evilest of evilest ways, which we'll also talk about later, and that is debt, through the form of things like mortgages, car loans, credit cards, personal loans, business loans, and other debt instruments. Now let's get back for a minute and talk about this stack right here. When there's not a lot of money in circulation, we go back to the basic business principles of supply and demand. When there's a low supply of money, obviously the demand to borrow that money is high. However, the demand for the banks and institutions to loan this money out to the people and circulate it into the economy is low. And they're going to discourage people from using this money. And how they're going to do this is by things with higher fees, higher interest rates, stringent payment terms, stringent credit qualifications, discouraging people from borrowing the money, or narrowing the ability for people to borrow, leaving only maybe a small percentage of elitists or wealthy people able to access cash when needed. Now, when this money does not make it into circulations, a trickle-down effect happens from here. Certain businesses will need money on a day-to-day basis and need to borrow to meet day-to-day obligations. And if businesses can't borrow money, and small businesses can't borrow money, they cannot grow. And if they cannot grow, they're not going to be able to hire people. And if they can't hire people, that means people are not working. And when you have unemployed people, they're not purchasing homes, they're not purchasing cars, they're not taking vacations, and they sure in the hell are not investing any money into the system. So when the Fed sees this, they have a problem. Because if this continues, the country will go into a recession and quite possibly a depression. So they have to act quickly, and there are tools that are in place. And this is what we call QE and other sort of tactics. So what the Feds will do here is contact the government and say, look, let's get some money. Let's get some money in this economy. So they just turn on the printing presses and they just start printing them up. They're just pieces of paper, guys. That's all they are. They're just pieces of paper. Turn the press on. Get that here. You want how much you want? I don't care. Billions, trillions. It doesn't matter. It's just paper. Just here. Take it. I don't want it. Take it. Here. Now you got all of this money, right? And they put this into the bank. Now the reverse is happening. The bank has flush with cash. They've got too much cash and they've got to get rid of it. They need to get this money into the economy. So you start seeing things to entice people into buying stuff, into purchasing things, into borrowing money. So you'll see things like sign and drive, no payments for 4 months, super low interest. And these bait people into purchasing things. So they start borrowing this money, businesses start borrowing this money, people start buying houses, buying cars, taking vacations, investing in the stock market. This money's just coming on in here into the system. Business is good, businesses are growing, people are employed, and they've got money now, and they can start to pay back these financial institutions here the money that they owe them. Now that sounds good in theory, because once the economy has been rejuvenated and the people start to pay back these loans, then the banks can pay back the Federal Reserve and the government, and this will go, of course, to our national debt somewhere up here. And that sounds good, right? A government taking care of its people, stepping in times of distress and need, and saving its people from economical disaster. Sounds so noble. If it were only that easy. You see, that system sounds good, but just like so many systems, it has been abused. Because a system like this can't sustain itself. It can't sustain itself because growth can't continue at these staggering rates. So recently, if you've been paying attention at all economically, we've been constantly told that things like unemployment was at an all-time low. Everybody had a job and everybody had cash and businesses were growing at record rates. Home sales were at all-time highs. Car sales were all-time highs. Travel industry was making more money than ever, and the stock market's just blowing up and it's going through all-time highs. These are the best of times. And while all this was happening, rather than trying to slow the economy or manage the economy, the Fed decides, hey, WTF, baby. Let's just throw some more money in here. Let's turn on these machines. This stuff is just blowing it. Look at this. Here, have it, people. Have it, people. Here, take it. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Isn't excessive money a good thing? Like you can never have too much money? Oh, yes you can, and I'll tell you why. You see, the government knows something about people. And that is people in the majority in herds, not an individual, but people in general are very poor when it comes to making sound financial decisions. And when you make money and cash available to people, they will most likely buy more stuff than they need. So maybe they're sitting there going, you know what, I didn't need a second home, but hey, let me be an Airbnb investor, all this free money, 2% interest, I might as well get another home. Never be that low. Well, I'll tell you what, let's buy that new car for my brother. I've always wanted a Corvette. Let's get one of them or a Lambo. Money's just, they're just, so easy. I guess we can spend some more next time we go on vacation. I'll put a little bit over here in the stock market just for a rainy day and so on. Now, where this starts to become a problem is the people of the country, the citizens, are now overextended. They are in debt. And they're going to realize that soon. Because as these payments need to be made back to the bank, we've all been in a situation where we've had someone like, Jesus, I didn't know this owning a house was going to be this much money. I should have never bought that car. Are you kidding me? We spent that much money on vacation? Whew. And then you have to start dipping into your savings to pay this back. Got to keep dipping. It's like, that's all I ever do is work to pay. I got to work overtime. I got to work extra. I just pay. And then you realize, you know what? I'm not working for a corporation. I don't work for a company. I work for a bank. I work for a bank. I am a slave to the system. Because here's the real hidden thing, guys. If a country can keep its citizens in debt and keep them to the ears and obligations, you can control a society like that. Because these people will have to compete with one another for labor, for services. They will be fighting. And the thing is, the more money that gets injected into the economy, the devaluation of this dollar, the worth of this dollar becomes less. So its purchasing power becomes less and the services get higher. And eventually everything gets too high for most people to buy. Businesses will naturally slow down. It's part of the economical cycle. Then people get laid off, or perhaps you have something what we're going through now with a coronavirus epidemic where 20, 30 million people are left out of work. And this money starts to be removed from the economy back into the hands of the banks and the elitists and the institutions that forced it on you in the first place. Now, here's where it really takes a different twist. Just like with the financial crisis of '08, the elitists, the ones in control, see this as an opportunity because now they can come back into here and buy these stocks and assets for lower prices than they were just a couple of months ago. They can repossess your vehicles and take control of your merchandise. They can repossess your home, buy your homes, buy up land because they're the only ones with money. Buy up these businesses and start taking control of all of this property. Now, if you're following along, and maybe you're reading between the lines, you're right about this. Basically, what happens in a scenario like this is the government printed up this money which never really existed in the first place, made this out of thin air, gives it to a society to purchase something. Then when the society can't afford to purchase this, they take it from them, basically stealing your property that they bought with counterfeit money. It's a beautiful system, right? And this continues to repeat itself. And then the system gets better. They start injecting liquidity, make it sound like, hey, we're nice people. We're trying to help. The real danger in this and the real problem with this is the system sounds good on the outside and it comes to you quietly and silently. It's like a silent hitman. It's subtle in the way that it works. But the real problem here is that, guys, if you're always going to be in debt, if you're always going to owe something and take money and spend more than you need, people are always looking for great investments on how they can make more money. Sometimes the solution is not frivolously spending your money, because as long as you are in debt, and I want you to hear this, as long as you're in debt, you're never going to be rich. No really rich person is in debt. Debt is what slaves the nation. Like we said, as long as people have to work, need to work, must work, then they are selling their souls, they are selling their dreams, they are selling their goals to work for the system because they have to pay back the man. And this is the man, right? And this is not a Republican, a Democrat, or independent problem. Every administration does this. This is the cycle of politics. It doesn't matter who's in charge. This sort of behavior is always going to continue. So we're going to talk about this here real quick on what we can do to help this, to fight this the best way we can, because the momentum on this is huge. So obviously you can see the problems with this. Not only does it enslave the citizens of our country by keeping them in debt, having us fighting over goods and services and devaluating our currency, but the hidden thing is the investments that we make going forward. When it comes to things like the stock market, where I work, we've seen this unprecedented change where things that used to matter, things that used to bother the stock market, like companies filing for bankruptcy, stocks with not good fundamentals or not good growth, having outstanding years and going up triple-digit percentages, seeing these massive rallies, these massive corrections, this back and forth action is all engineered by these monetary policies and the Fed's intervention with our markets, the Fed's interventions with our economy, not allowing nature and nature's process to take its course, not allowing the market and the market itself to work out its course, constantly intervening with that process. Now, this is why oftentimes I think we're seeing what we see now, when a lot of people are reaching out to me and they're saying, how come the market gaps up every day? Because it's easier for the Fed to buy the securities, or the algos to buy the securities, or to manipulate the market in an overnight session when the volumes are smaller. So what we're seeing right now are the rules or the things that we've learned about investing and trading and stuff like that, it no longer applies. Now, as far as us as a society and how we get ahead as people, this is where the difficult process comes in. It's how does the lower class, How does the middle class, if there even is a middle class anymore, how do those people get their share of the wealth? How do you move towards the elite? How do you live the best life that you can? How does your dollar go further? And I'll begin by saying right now, I don't care what age bracket you're in, how much money you currently have, or what your goals are. It's far more important to focus on your debt than it is the amount of money you have. Because as long as you have that debt, as long as you have those obligations, as long as you're overspending and you're continuing to contribute into the system and buying things that you don't need or buying things in excess, like you're forced to or subconsciously or consciously, as long as you're doing that, you're always going to be a slave, so to speak. And I hate using that term, but it's the truth. You're a slave to some sort of system. Now, when we think about this, the real true problem here comes in the fact that you have goals, you have dreams, you have things that you're trying to accomplish in your life. But how many of us have had to put our dreams on hold? How many of us have to put our goals on hold because we didn't have the time? We don't have the time because we're working endless hours so we can pay for what? Pay for possessions, paying for things. Now, this is something that I've worked really hard on over the last year, especially this year. So most of you are like following me in my office. And I'm sort of documenting this whole thing about how I'm trying to minimalize my life, how I'm trying to downsize my life, how I'm trying to detach myself from possessions and things. That doesn't mean I'm trying to be a bum. It doesn't mean I'm trying to be a loser. But what I'm trying to do is become more self-reliant on myself, pursuing my goals, pursuing my dreams, pursuing the path that I truly want to follow in life. It doesn't mean I don't want to make money. I can make all the money I want, but just because I make money, I don't have to spend it. A good example of this is always Warren Buffett, a guy who's worth billions but living in the same house since he was 20 years old or whatever, drives the same car. It's all about freeing yourself from debt. If you want to get ahead, guys, I'm telling you right now, debt is your enemy. That's what this is all about. And the more that the government and the Federal Reserve can print money, forcing you to take it or enticing you to take it, so to speak, and they can keep you in debt, they own you. They own you. And I don't know where the quote came from, but there's nothing worse than thinking you're free and not being free. Because as long as you have debt, you're not really a free person. You're just under the illusion that you're free. You're not. So step one, guys, get out of debt. If you do anything, get out of debt. We all right now need to make an effort to reduce our debt, to reduce our dependencies on materialistic things. Now, you go out and make the money. You want to buy a Ferrari, you got cash, buy the Ferrari. But you want to finance it? Don't finance it. Lower those. Lower your dependency. And with that, go start that business. Become a trader. Become a real estate investor. Do something that you want to do. And you will be free and fulfilled. So anyway, guys, I hope you like this edition of Rumor Rants. You got any complaints, quarrels, curmudgeons? I don't care. Send them my way. Support at thelink.list.com. You want to trade stocks, trade with me anytime. Right there's the link. Until the next Rumor Rants, show your support. Down there, click the bell icon too so you can always be notified of my new posts. Until next time, thanks for watching.